This is The Future Of, where experts share their vision of the future and how their work is helping shape it for the better. I'm David Carsten.
And I'm Celeste Free. Every day, technology helps decide what we see, what we buy, and how we communicate, often without us realising it. And with the fast adoption and development of generative AI, we're entering a new kind of partnership between humans and tech.
In this episode, we're joined by Professor Billy Sung to look beyond what AI can do today. We explore how human-machine decision-making may evolve over the next decade and what needs to be prioritised now to shape a better future. We've also unpacked AI's impact on education in a recent episode. If you're interested in how these technologies are already shaping the way we learn, you might want to add it to your listening queue. I'd like to start with a bit of a primer first. We're using AI as a bit of a catch-all term, really, but can you very briefly just summarise what we generally are talking about when we refer to AI in the current context?
Actually, in general, artificial intelligence or AI are actually everywhere. There's definitely, I would say, not misconception, but a generalization of what artificial intelligence and AI is because of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT in the last 3 years, they are probably the consumer-facing kind of Gen AI or generative AI tools. And a lot of people refer to AI as generative AI. However, if we think about the eras before ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, so on and so forth. Actually, artificial intelligence is everywhere in our society, even before generative AI. So, for instance, if you put up a Google map, right, and you go, I want to travel from my home to Curtin universities. And it actually gives me estimates of the time. It gives me the best route. That's actually artificial intelligence because AI is basically a system that actually uses data to better predict a particular outcome. And in the Google Map example, it's basically going, okay, well, your outcome or the goal of you using Google Map is actually to find the best route, the fastest, most effective route to go to Curtin University. And AI uses traffic data, real-time data, historical data, how your car travels, and how other people travels, and actually predicts the best route. And so it is an artificial intelligence system by itself. And so in general, I mean, there is obviously different types of AI. You have those that predicts things, so predictive analytics. You have generative AI, so ChatGPT, Gemini, they generate some sort of things. It could be an image, it could be a text, it could be now audio. And there's obviously other artificial intelligence that actually works behind the scenes, like the Netflix recommendation system AI. So it learns from whatever you have watched, whatever other people have watched. And so in general, artificial intelligence is actually everywhere. And it is about predicting things, right? Predicting an outcome or a goal.
It really sounds like AI is already integrated in people's lives without them even realizing. How do you think people's decisions are being shaped by AI being so involved?
So in general, if we look at artificial intelligence in general, our decisions, especially from a consumer perspective, our decisions are actually really affected by the outcome or the goals or the prediction that these AIs are doing. A good example, again, drawing our mind back before ChatGPT, right? When you search for something on Google Ads, that's actually artificial intelligence. So how does it do it is that, when you're searching, let's say, I need a new laptop because I broke it. I search for, I don't know, a particular brand and a particular model. What Google Ads does, even before ChatGPT, is it actually go through the advertiser who have that product and look for, the best option for you to click on as the ad. So even before ChatGPT, we already have ads that are using, I guess, predictions of whether I could actually get you to click on the ad. I am going to serve you ads that are going to be the most relevant, the most likely that you're going to click on, and therefore influence your decisions. Now, if we cast our mind now to 2026, ChatGPT just announced that they will be testing ads in the free tiers of subscription. Mm-hmm. If you look at the statistics, I think there was a number of industry report going through from 10% to up to 35 or 40% of Google searches that is about product that is actually taken over by ChatGPT or similar Gen AI or particular AI that people uses. Now, if you think about that, and if these AI start actually putting ads in, think about, the implication that, when you're asking an AI, go, what's the best laptop that I should buy in 2026? And it goes, well, these are the options, but how much of those options are actually created by AI?
This decision sponsored by.
Yes.
Yeah. Just in relation to this question about decision making, can we trust the machines, Billy? Is that something that we can be confident in placing our trust in?
I think that's definitely a multi-million dollars or even like multi-billion dollars question. Can we really trust AI? And I think there's definitely different perspectives. Now, can we actually trust it from, I guess, a consumer perspective? It really depends on, I guess, how the algorithm is actually being developed. So a lot of the time, as I said earlier in the podcast, is that all artificial intelligence has one common idea, which is using existing data or data that they have and to predict a particular outcome or goal. So whether we can trust it is whether we have quality data that actually could predict that outcome and goal. So to give you an example, right? If we ask any of the AI nowadays and go, can you predict, the lottery numbers for me, right? Maybe that, now with we call it guardrail or parameters that says that you can't do that in Gen AI and ChatGPT and Gemini, so on and so forth. But if you actually were able to get it to split out some numbers, those numbers are random, right? We know that lottery are random. And what happens is the Gen AI or the AI will give you some numbers. And can we trust it? No, you can't, because we know that everything is random. Now, but can we trust an AI to provide you with the most accurate, or not most accurate, I would say likely things that you would like based on your behavior and based on others' behaviors? Technically, we can do that. And in fact, in marketing and in consumer psychology, we know that we can predict people's behavior to a certain extent. Not 100%. If there's 100%, like an algorithm of 100%, I definitely won't tell anyone. I'll probably commercialize that. But definitely there is certain predictors of whether you're going to choose a product over another, a brand over another, or a retailer over another, so on and so forth. So there's definitely that trust issue. And I think the other perspective is, in some sense, the accuracy and precisions of the model in different contexts differs. And so it really depends on how good is the model. And so a lot of the time when I talk to industry partners or even students, how much do you trust the output of AI? To be honest, from my perspective, AI nowadays, they could probably do 50-60% of the work or of the outcome that you want, but there's still a human in the loop that is required.
What do you think will determine whether trust in Gen AI rises or falls in the future?
That's also a great question. So I think from both industry report and even the literature, in fact, if you look at the academic literature, there is a uprising of AI research, and especially on trust. Like how can we actually make people trust AI in different contexts?
It's a growth area.
Exactly. Yes. And I think even for me as a subject matter expert and academic that actually in this field, I would say I see 20 papers every week just on how do we get people to trust AI, AI influencer, AI algorithm, AI recommendation system. But it always comes down to three different factors. And these three factors are reliability, transparency, and fairness. So reliability, we talked a little bit about that. So accuracy and precision of the prediction. But there is also transparency. So how did the AI actually make that recommendation? And I think this actually relate to what we call explainability, in the sense that can an AI explain the reasoning and the algorithm that is behind to actually recommend me a product or to generate an outcome or generate an output? And I think that explainability and transparency of how the AI actually provide the output of that recommendation is a big thing. If you look at a research in some top journals, they actually show that by actually providing explainability, the reasoning behind why an AI did that or why an AI provided that option, that actually increased acceptance by more than 40-50%, which is quite interesting. And last but not least, obviously, fairness. So basically, that's not just fairness between people or access to AI, but fairness in the sense that is the AI actually taking a fair decisions on what's going on? So ethically, is it correct? Is it fair in the sense? So basically, if ChatGPT, let's say, do have an ad, how is the ad being determined? How do ChatGPT actually promote those products and services? And that's a perception of a consumer, because Google has been commercializing ad space for eons, right? 20, 30 years. Unbeknown to most people, a lot of the algorithm that detect or to depict ads on Google engine are basically written. And so you have digital marketing agencies that knows kind of how to play around with the algorithm to make sure that their ads get served. So if you are a brand, that sells laptop, you have certain keywords that you want to bid for. You want to outbid your competitors, so on and so forth. Now, how is that going to translate to ChatGPT or similar AI kind of system? Is it the same? And I think, to be very honest with you, from a marketing perspective or from a personal perspective, I would say it wouldn't be any different. It would just be, we call it pay to play kind of model, where if you want me as a ChatGPT or Gemini to serve you the right ad, well, the brand have to pay me enough for me to incentivize me to give you that, give consumer that ad, so on and so forth.
That's a massive power structure in the making right there, isn't it, Billy? You mentioned transparency before. Is disclosure related to that as well? I mean, I'm thinking specifically about Spotify in the last couple of days, copying a bit of blowback about one of their AI artists receiving a lot of attention and a lot of listens at the expense perhaps of emerging real artists, and the ethics attached to that. Is disclosure part of the conversation as well?
I think that's a very timely question. Why is that the case? Is because my lab and myself at Curtin University is actually doing something along that line. Is disclosure going to increase explainability and therefore transparency and therefore trust? And what we find is actually disclosure is the double-edged sword. So what that means is that on a positive side, yes, if consumer actually expect disclosure, if an AI is being used to generate a particular ad or particular music, they actually do expect the generator or the producer to actually acknowledge that AI has been used, and they don't want to be, lied to. That taking an AI generated output as a human generated output. That's the positive side. But what we actually find empirically across a number of different contexts. So we have done research in AI influencer. We have done AI ads. We have also done AI ad copies and a number of different contexts. And we find that disclosure actually reduces the marketing effectiveness of different marketing stimuli. We haven't really done much on music when we are addressing the music side of things, but I think it wouldn't be much difference in the sense that actually what we're seeing is a double-edged sword, in the sense that consumer expects disclosure when it comes to AI, but then when the brand or the producers themselves actually disclose AI, human actually are less likely to accept AI outputs in comparison to human output, which is quite interesting. But there is also nuance to it. And our study in the Curtin University actually shows that, it's not about who is producing it or what is producing it. It's actually what are the content, where are the creativity, so on and so forth.
It sounds like a really, dare I say it, a human reaction to the content of what it is, right? Yeah, so just at first glance, is that the vibe you're getting from the data?
I think from the data that we have collected, it actually motivated a number of different hypotheses that we are currently testing. But one of them is definitely that human element, where consumer expects certain output like music or an ad or a certain marketing stimuli to have some human aspects of creativity. Some producers or generators or influencer might actually take that away and just put an AI on it. Consumer actually reacts to it, and we call that in psychology, in consumer psychology, psychological reactance, right? And what happens is people just do not like the controllability or what they like being taken away. But you never know what will happen, 10 years down the track, 20 years down the track, when AI is becoming more prevalent, right? We're always talking about AI agents. These AI agents can do a number of different decisions and all those. And once it's embedded in our society, will consumer be more accepted? Or more, is it more acceptable for consumers when it comes to, AI music or AI ads, or even AI social media posts, or even a fully AI influencer that all the contents and all the images are AI generated? My prediction is that actually, as society develop and as AI advance, I think we're going to move to a stage where consumers are more accepting of these outputs.
I've seen those AI influencers and it's actually I don't know if I like it or not, but I've seen those posts, they look pretty real. It looks like a real person, and then they have photos with famous people. And I'm like, how is that even allowed? Are they allowed to create a post with that AI influencer next to someone famous and post that? And when you also were talking about sort of that human touch, how can an AI influencer have that human touch that will allow people to kind of accept it?
That's an extremely good question, because we're actually touching into an area of research that, again, is booming, called anthropomorphism. So in the sense that, how is certain objects, or it could be AI, it could be, a cartoon characters, how do they take on human characteristics? And what we showed is what our lab shows, or what our finding shows, and also other research institute and researchers show, is that as human, we are actually quite susceptible, or quite likely to attribute human characteristics to different objects. So, for instance, taking an example like animals. Right? Animals are not human, but we do see human characteristics in our pets, in our animal. That's anthropomorphism. In the AI influencer perspective, that's exactly the same, whereby we actually assign certain human characteristics to that AI influencer. And what's interesting here is when we talk about influencer, we are normally talking about social media. And basically in social media, it's very different to other, we call it point of sale. So for instance, like, it's very different to you going into an e-commerce website and buying something. An influencer should be developing a relationship and engagement with their audience. And what you actually see is that human does actually has the tendency to actually establish these, we call it parasocial relationship. Why parasocial relationship is like, because the influencer doesn't show exactly that kind of relationship, right? It's only you yourself who think that you have a relationship with that. You
project it, don't you?
That's right, yes. And we do have parasocial relationship with celebrity, like human celebrities. But what we find is that because of anthropomorphism, because human does attribute human characteristics to objects, including AI influencer, we also display parasocial relationship with AI influencer. And it's not much different to human influencer or human celebrity. So in the sense that, without social media, you through a TV, you would probably go, okay, I really recognize that celebrity. I really like this celebrity. Now that's a parasocial relationship, right? You're forming a parasocial relationship with that celebrity. It's exactly the same that is happening in a social media context and a medium. Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy, isn't it?
Very
We're so susceptible. But I wonder also, like 10 years from now, and we're talking to possibly AI natives who know nothing other than AI-generated content. It's just going to be the world in which they live, right?
I would say there's certainly, at least looking at the advancement of AI, I think that human-in-the-loop kind of model will still survive. Technically speaking, now AI can do a lot of things, but they also can't do a number of different things. Technically speaking, the research shows that we are quite far away from AGI, or artificial general intelligence, that AI doesn't really have general intelligence. What they are predictive models that predicts the next best word, predicts the next best image, so on and so forth. And so what they're doing is they're just doing an algorithmic prediction of what you want. As human, we actually need to be the strategist to actually make the decision first. Then the AI is the executor, and human in the loop means human comes back in and go, okay, well, no, this is wrong, or I want it this way, or, the human actually provide those strategic kind of advices. And I don't think that will ever change, at least from advancements of AI and looking at it for the next 10, 20 years, I don't think that would change until we really reach a stage where AGI or artificial general intelligence really comes into play, where they can really replace human thinking or reasoning, because it is an illusion that they're reasoning. They're not really reasoning, even though, a lot of AI says, I'm reasoning. They're not reasoning. They're just going back to, whatever data they have and go, okay, this is kind of the pattern about
They're
reasoning.
deducing, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
What do you think will happen if we start relying too heavily on AI, especially for decision making?
I think we definitely have a risk of making subpar or suboptimal decisions. We know from, it doesn't have to be research, even anecdotally, if you actually ask an AI to make a decision for you, what happens is it will not have enough context. And from a technical perspective, and even I guess a non-technical perspective, what context is basically it doesn't understand you, right? If Billy goes to AI and go, I want a new laptop, give me a recommendation. So that's the only, we call it prompt or user inquiry. They don't know anything about you, right? They don't know Billy's age. They don't know Billy's where he lives. They don't know what Billy uses. So for me personally, I'm a Apple user. I'm locked in an Apple ecosystem.
Same.
Yes,
Guilty as charged.
exactly. Now, if they don't know that, they will probably suggest me a Windows laptop or Windows computer. Now, that could be easily solvable. You give the context, right? And that's where the data comes in. So, from Billy's, past 10 years purchasing history, he has never bought an Android or a Windows computer. So we can infer that he is a Mac user or a Mac OS user. So I'm not going to suggest him with Windows laptop. Now, having access to those data is where I think a lot of AI advancements are kind of being slowed down, because as we all know, right, as a consumer, we don't want AI giants to have all of our data, right? Like, for example, Microsoft, Google already has a lot of our data. We wouldn't want someone like ChatGPT or Claude to have access to all of our data. But if we are looking at decision-making kind of perspective, decision quality, for an AI to make the best or optimal decisions, it needs to know all the context. So that's where the dilemma is, right? The paradoxical kind of tendency. So as human, we don't want to share the data. But for an AI to make good decisions for me or for us, we actually need them to have as much data as possible.
I do think a lot of people are using AI to make decisions nowadays. What if an AI-influenced decision does cause harm? Who is actually responsible in that case? Is it the developer, the organization, AI itself? What would you say?
I think personally, I do have my opinion. But then the question that you ask is actually something that is being tackled not only by regulators, but also by AI companies or surrounding services around AI companies. A good example is if you go search for cases of where this actually happens, it has already happened. So for instance, in mental health, there are a lot of cases where kids or people have actually used AI and that have left them to suffer more on their disorders. And I think that's where, I guess, the dilemma is, where your question talks about, who is responsible? Well, there's a number of different ways to actually slice this pie, right? If you look at it from a technical perspective, the developer has kind of the responsibility over the design, right? So if you are ChatGPT's creator, OpenAI, you have the responsibility of how you actually provide a product or service to someone. In the wakes of these cases, what OpenAI and other AI have done is they put what we call guardrails. So these are kind of rules that AI needs to follow. So for instance, if you now ask Google Gemini or OpenAI ChatGPT to actually Photoshop someone, they say, no, we can't do that, right? You can't even generate cartoon characters out of a existing image. But if you use Grok, they would allow you to do that. So it just depends on guardrails. Now, what the designers, or I guess these companies or AI companies are doing, is they are providing, the guardrails to not only safeguard themselves from liabilities. I'm not a legal expert, but that's what I think, that safeguard themselves.
Sure, that's a massive priority for them.
Exactly, yes. But then if you think about it from a different perspective, the user also have a responsibility.
You mentioned before that, that this does not happen without human input.
Exactly.
at the very front end of the process. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And so, from an AI perspective, it will never want to predict a goal or an output or create an output that actually leads to negative outcomes, right? But in some sense, a lot of these cases, if you look very deeply into it, if you can actually look at how the user is interacting with the AI, the user also have the responsibility. So, for example, I think there was one case where in the US, a user actually uses an AI, and the user continuously prompt the AI to suggest them how to create a bomb. That was, I think, 2 years ago. And the AI actually did, at the end, give them kind of like a recipe. Technically speaking, it comes out to be a fake recipe because the AI just hallucinated, because the AI wasn't going to give you a recipe, but the user just keep prompting and prompting and prompting and prompting. And what AI does is, now here is the developer's problem, right? When they're training these AI, now they haven't shared this with us, but research have shown that when they're training this AI, they were rewarding the AI by actually completion. So if you complete this task, we're going to reward you. And so what the AI is trained to do is to just complete the task. That is why hallucination comes in, because you are asking me to create a recipe of a bomb. I don't have a recipe of a bomb. You keep asking me. And because of my reward system that I have built up through training of AI, I'm just going to give you a recipe, right? And even though if it's fake, and that's how hallucination comes to play. And so again, you can see, in that situation, the developer has an issue or a responsibility. The user has a responsibility. But also, if you think about it, also regulators also have a level of responsibility. So, for instance, recently in Australia, we have the social media ban. I would say, look, if we are looking at that dilemma, we're probably 20 years late in regulating that type of social media ban in kids that are 16 years or younger. If we have done that about 10, 15 years ago, maybe it's more effective. And what we see after 1 month of launching this, we're 20 years late. Social media came 20 years ago, and now you're forcing kids to not use social media, and it's not going to be effective at all. It's because there will be workarounds, so on and so forth.
Yeah, if we were talking 2006, Facebook is widely released, and you compare that to, say, ChatGPT now and generative AI, are we doing enough? Well, are developers doing enough? I'm just surprised that we have to wait for things to go wrong and for human nature to once again just prove itself as being a little bit, less than optimal. Why does it take an actual event for the developers to put the guardrails in place?
Definitely a good question, and that's probably something for the developer to really think about, in the sense that I think I wouldn't say, from a perspective, I wouldn't say they have a bad intention to develop something that could cause harm. But definitely, I think from a government perspective or regular perspective, there's definitely much more attention needed, from a regulation kind of perspective of what can these AI tool actually do, right? And where the liability actually lays when things are wrong. But obviously, regulation and a lot of policies work requires evidence. And so what we see is that it doesn't have to be just AI. In any other very controversial or let's say, other policies, what we find is that, our policy and regulations lag behind because we just need those evidence, right? We need really robust evidence to show, oh yes, this is causing harm, and therefore we need to do something. But definitely there is some more attention that is required, because AI is advancing so fast. If you cast your mind back 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was, even before ChatGPT was widely open, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the large language model called BART. VART.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the earlier version of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT 4.0 was kind of the general public kind of accessible, everyone loves it, so on and so forth. But I was actually using ChatGPT 3.0. So that was based on just really poorly trained large language model. At that time, no one could actually foresee that in the next 1 or 2 years, we are now at ChatGPT 5.2. Gemini, I don't even know what the numbers is now. But the frontier models, we call it, they are so clever or so intelligent to a point where they can actually deceive us of they are actually reasoning. But technically speaking, they're not reasoning. They're just, as I said, using predictions, right? They're not reasoning as like a human brain, but they can deceive human that they are actually thinking. And they are doing quite a lot of things. And without a doubt, AI is here to stay, and AI is very powerful right now. And I think what we really need to have more conversation about is, what are the guardrails that we need for AI? What are the regulations that are needed? What are the regulatory foresight that we need so that we can, provide a safe technology for everyone?
What do you think is the most likely future for human-machine decision-making? And how specifically would you want that future to look like?
I think the most likely future that we'll see, even in the next 5-6 years, is what we call a co-created decision-making process. So you actually basically share your decision-making process with an AI or with some sort of AI, which we already do, right? As we talked about it earlier in the podcast, we share our decisions with AI nowadays. Even without ChatGPT and Gemini, we share our decision based on Google search, on recommendation systems, so on and so forth. But what we actually are seeing is that in the next 5 to 6 years, AI will become an even more integral part of our consumption context, and even in our life, and to a point where maybe when we're making decisions, parts of the decisions is actually shared with an AI. This is actually a interest of the Consumer Research Lab at Curtin University, where we do a lot of human AI interaction and user AI interaction, whereby what we are seeing is that we call it share agency. So obviously you have certain agencies when you make a decision, right? When you make a decision of buying a car, you probably have a lot of agency. Why? Because you go into the car dealership, you try the car, you think about the financial, you think about the functions, you go back home and think about it. Then you come in, negotiate the price, so on and so forth. You yourself as a human in that decision-making process are taking a lot of responsibility. And so in a psychological agency side of things, I actually take a lot of agency. I attribute that decision to be my decisions. Now, if you imagine 5-6 years later, in marketing, in consumer psychology, we call it customer journey. So when you have a awareness of I need a car, to when you buy a car, there's a lot of different stages. And what you'll find is that AI will be more embedded into different stages. So for instance, before you go to a car dealership, you might already ask an AI, I want a hatchback. This is my price range, and I'm in Perth. AI can actually sift through a lot of information. Technically speaking, I always say this, AI is very good at sifting through millions and millions of data points. So if you give them 300 pages of information, it can summarize it, it can read it. A human can't do that in 5 seconds. AI can. So what happens is, in the near future, it might be that, AI will actually sift through all the information and go, okay, Billy, you want this car feature, you want this price range. Here is 5 options. And now here's the user responsibility, right? For me, I'm a prompt freak in the sense that, I optimize all my prompts and I have like a Trello board with all the prompts. Now, if you ask it to give you 10 options, it will give you 10 options. But if you give me some option, it might give you 3, right? But if you say, give me 5, it'll give you 5 options. Now, that's already influencing a decision, right? We call it consideration set. So basically it gives you, let's say 3 or 5 options. And basically that's your consideration set. Now, from the need recognition of you wanting a car, the AI now suggested 3 to 5 options. Now your consideration set is kind of limited to that 3 to 5 options. And then maybe you'll go, okay, well, I like these 2 cars. Now I wanted to go and test drive it. Now imagine in a world where, let's say physically, the AI can't test drive it for you, but it can actually look at the reviews for you. Now, if you ask the AI, look, I know you can't drive, but now tell me about the driving experience of this car. It can actually go back to the reviews and actually filter it down and go, okay, well, 80% of the people actually prefer this car over this car, or say favorable things about this car over this car. Now you can see how AI is really embedded into your decision making. And what we are seeing is called this shared agency decision making process, where you now, with a very human decision, like buying a car, traditionally, now you're sharing that decision making process with the AI. And it really depends on the acceptability of the consumer, but individually, right? And so for the consumer, what we see in the next 5 to 6 years, I actually think that a lot more of our decisions will be not governed, I shouldn't say governed is the wrong word, would be assisted by AI. And why is that the case is because the more user actually uses in their consumption context and the more useful they think the AI is, sifting through 300 pages of information and giving you options, sifting through, 5,000 reviews and telling you about driving experience. That's actually the power of AI. And what we will find is that a lot of our decision-making process is actually assisted by AI. Now, you ask me, do I want that future? I would say personally, I'm not opposed to that future.
Nicely put.
In a sense, I guess my position is that if AI is being used as a tool, so it's just like Microsoft Words, right? So Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, they're just tools. And if user actually use it efficiently, it actually makes your decision more effective and more efficient. But that's where I draw the line. When it becomes manipulated. So for instance, if certain car brand can start manipulating a decision, that's where it crosses the line. And I think that's actually a big issue in a lot of people's mind, especially when OpenAI have openly said, we are going to test ads in ChatGPT. But they have also come out and say, well, it's going to be fair. And so again, going back to our discussions.
Fair. Yeah.
Do you think you'll know that it's an ad when you're on ChatGPT, for example?
Disclosure.
Yes, yeah, well, yes. Oh, okay. Well, so, that's not that bad.
Yes. So that's what they're coming out to say now, that, okay, if we're testing ad, we will show you, like, this is sponsored ad.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Ethical
That makes
AI.
me feel better.
Yeah. Billy, you talked just before about optimizing your prompts. Over the next 10 to 20 years of AI-assisted decision-making, as that develops, what are some of the skills that perhaps we should be learning, to really, again, optimize our experience of it? It really must be an exciting time for university students coming through and figuring out, well, how do I take advantage of this revolution?
Definitely. And I think you raise a good point. And prompt engineering is definitely a skill set that is necessary, especially at this era of AI. And funny enough, I do teach at Curtin University, and what we actually find is that because I'm such a heavy AI user, and I use a number of different services. I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT, I use a number of different other AI, Perplexity, you name it. I have probably about 6 or 7 AI open on my desktop every day with my work, and so I'm a heavy AI user to a point where I can kind of tell the AI outputs. And whether it's a good output from an AI or a bad output from an AI with a bad prompt or a good prompt. As an academic, we have the freedom of whether we allowed students to use Gen AI. And in my unit, I openly say you can use Gen AI, but you cannot copy and paste. But what we are actually finding is that, or at least from my anecdotal evidence, is that students are actually just, let's say, uploading the assignment brief and go complete the assessment for me without any prompt or context. Now, this is where it falls down.
Yeah.
Right? When we talked about context, right? It doesn't know what I'm teaching digital marketing. What digital marketing theories did we cover? What kind of digital marketing tools did we cover? It doesn't look at, what exactly the frameworks that we have taught. Even though if you upload all my lecture slides and everything, it wouldn't be able to complete a whole assessment because it has a limited context window. Now, this is where it comes back to the skill set. So if you actually understand the technical aspects of AI and how to best use AI effectively and efficiently, you would be able to actually generate what we call not prompt engineering now, it's context engineering. So as a person to engineer the content for the AI to make the best output. And so, getting the most relevant information to the AI, getting the most important data sets or data points to AI, steering the reasoning process that the AI is doing, and actually providing that creativity. That's where the skill sets come in. That's the context engineering kind of skill sets and creativity comes in. And I think that's what we're lacking a lot of the time when you look at people who don't really use AI that much. And I think that's a very important skill set because, as we said, right, I give this analogy a lot. An AI today is kind of like if you put a F1 engine in a car, in a very old car, without steering wheels. So it can process mountains and mountains of data. In fact, if I throw it, 500 academic papers and I ask it, summarize this literature for me, it can do it very, very well. But what it can't do is it cannot write a new literature review based on those 500 papers. And why is that the case? Is because it will write it, but it would be subpar. And why is that the case? Is because AI has a number of technical issues. One of them is memory issue. One of them is context issue. What happens is it will just reiterate whatever people have been saying, whatever information that it is being given. Now, here's where the human skill set needs to come in, where the humans say, oh, don't talk about this, talk about this. Now, I want a paragraph that talks about this idea. And maybe these are some examples of references that you need to go look at, so on and so forth. Now, if you do it like in that way, what happens is you are already engineering the context where the AI is operating. And that is actually much more effective and much more efficient. And so I think context engineering, the human aspects and also that human creativity is probably the skill set that we really need to rely on as we advances into this AI era.
Well, thank you so much, Billy, for coming in today. We really appreciate it, and it's been some great insights.
Thank you very much for having me and really enjoyed the podcast.
You've been listening to The Future Of, a podcast recorded on Wajak Boujar and powered by Curtin University. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it. And if you want to hear from more experts, stay up to date by following us on your favourite podcast app. Bye for now.